G20, India has ensured that it is one of India's biggest diplomatic festivals. The national capital has been completely decked up. It has been redone in many places, beautified in a lot more many places, and it is ready to welcome all the delegates who will be coming in from the G20 countries, engaging with them, and to in fact plan out what the world would be looking. One world, one family is what the motto is when it comes to the G20 Summit, and it comes from India's civilizational values such as Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. And to show you more about it, let's in fact take a look at the manner in which the preparations are being carried out. If you have a problem with security, well, please understand, when it comes to providing security for our guests, the Delhi police as well as other security agencies had to draw separate kind of security arrangements across the national capital. One of the newspapers, Prominent Daily, has also published a full-page understanding of how the traffic situation in the national capital is going to pan out in the coming 3 to 4 days. Many of our monuments have been completely decked up. Several areas have been beautified with fountains and mini gardens. G20 welcome posters are there all across, and also selfie points have been established as well. These are some of the visuals that we bring in on how the G20 Festival of Diplomacy, I would say, is being carried out in the national capital. Well, these are also being set up to ensure that the delegates feel welcome. Interestingly enough, India has been able to move the G20 narrative away from protest climate activists as well as from complete activities that would tend to in fact give the G20 group a bad name. We have seen how climate activists as well as left-wing groups have been trying to barge into G20 summits, but in India, the government has been able to go ahead and make it a festival for the country and its citizens as well. It is being said that the Prime Minister has also given a set of do's and don'ts to the ministers as well. Some of the ministers who are supposed to be ministers in waiting, trying to receive the foreign guests, have been given their schedule. It is also being said that when it comes to Bharat Mandapam, they've asked the ministers to avoid their official vehicles and to in fact reach the Mandapam using the shuttle service that is available, and at the same time on how to engage with the diplomats as well as the leaders coming in from the G20 countries. Interestingly enough, an app has been created with all Indian languages and all the languages of the G20 countries. So nothing should be lost in translation. So this is the minutest level at which the Prime Minister has in fact engaged when it comes to the G20. If you were in Delhi in the night, you would have seen the city being decked up with lights, with fountains, and with the flags of the G20 countries. Big engagement that we are in fact going to see when it comes to the G20 in the country. There you see the kind of changes that have been brought in. Display screens also put out across the national capital region for the G20 Summit. It is supposed to be one of the flagship programs of the Prime Minister. He has been speaking about it. He has kept the diplomatic fraternity also on their toes. He has kept the bureaucracy also on their toes on the factor of G20. And some of the leaders have in fact been speaking about it. Some of the ministers have also been speaking about the G20 Summit. Let's listen into some of those reactions.
So I feel very nice because the host city is my constituency, and all the beautification work which has been done and which you can see all around, especially in New Delhi. I'm grateful that Lieutenant Governor has personally supervised many things and brought in so many corporate households and others, and from Delhi Can Board to Transport Ministry, Delhi Government, PWD, CPWD, everyone has been brought together, strung up their efforts to revamp Delhi, and you see those beautiful sculptures, etc., around most corners. Those have come from CSR funding also. So a lot of private people have come forward to support the cause, and of course Government of India has spent whatever Government of India has spent, which is few thousand crores on this hosting this particular event, which is of great importance to this country from two perspectives. One, G20 presidency has come India's way for the first time. India's been the host for the first time. Secondly, this is one event of this scale where all the heads of states of 20 most important countries and 9 other countries who are special invitees are going to descend on Delhi on one particular day. So this huge paraphernalia, which works with something like G20, happens to be hosted by Delhi. And post-COVID, this is one such big event of its kind for the whole world to witness. So hosting itself has been quite a experience for everyone who's worked on this, even for people like you who will be covering it.
Yeah.
Because this is once in a lifetime kind of a thing which happens. But I'm sure India will get to host many such important events in near future.
Well, as Meenakshi said it, there's been a huge coordination that's gone between different governments in Delhi, the capital region, to in fact beautify the city, because as she said, this is the first time that India is hosting the event in the country, and the presidency of the G20 has come to India. So India is in fact going ahead and ensuring that no stone is left unturned to ensure the success of this huge international meet that is happening in the national capital. There is a huge security arrangement that has also been carried out. So traffic snarls are expected. The entire routes have been also changed. This is to ensure that there is seamless connectivity for the delegates that are coming in when it comes to the city and to move around it. There are some traffic snarls that could take place, but the traffic rearrangement of routes has been already published by many of the leading dailies in the country, as well as you can take a look at it and just see which is the location and the route that you have to take to avoid some of these restrictions that have been placed around the area. Meanwhile, there have been also reports coming in that the beautification of the city is something that has happened because of the G20. The central government is said to have spent around 2,000 crores on organizing this. We are expecting some of the biggest leaders from across the 20 countries that we've seen. And also there is a first as well. This time the African Union will be given the permanent membership, and it will be the newest member when it comes to the G20, and that is said to be a historical first as well. Let's listen into what Union Minister Rajiv Chandrasekhar had to say when it came to the G20.
Indian presidency of the G20 this last 1 year has certainly left, in my opinion, an extremely strong impression, an indelible impression on the nations of the world in terms of our own values, in terms of how we see the future of the world. And this started with a very simple yet profound statement by our Prime Minister, where he said that, look, this is not the time for war, this is the time for economic development and prosperity for our people. And in a lot of ways, that summarizes how the world should be looking at the next 10, 20 years. That we really should be looking at creating economic opportunity for our people all around the country, all around the world and the country. We should be looking at sustainability, protecting our planet. And so he's laid out his life mission for the world. And I have absolutely no doubt all of that, along with the fact that we are demonstrating the power of technology to empower people, transform their lives via the DPIs that we have. There is a lot of consensus in the G20 about that. that we can create sustainability, we can think of a peaceful future without conflict, and we can also talk about innovation and improving governance and empowering people with technology. So I think certainly of the many G20 presidencies in the recent times, the Indian presidency certainly will rank up there as one of the defining presidencies of the G20 in recent times, at least in my opinion.
Well, all the ministers, union ministers who are in fact trying to ensure that the G20 Summit is a huge success. These are the banners that have been set across the city. You would be seeing the G20 theme playing across the national capital region. The Prime Minister, of course, from one international summit to the other, you had him attend the BRICS Summit and then the ASEAN-India meet, which was also held in Indonesia, in Jakarta, where the Prime Minister just attended it. And from there, he's coming back because he's got the G20 Summit hosted by India itself. And the Prime Minister, in fact, saying that it is a very important summit for India, and India wanted to in fact showcase to the world that it is a power that in fact was looking for cooperation. As the Union Minister was saying that this is not an era of war and this is an era of cooperation, that as the Prime Minister had said. That is what seems to be one of the dominant aspects of it. The Prime Minister has also showcased the G20 event as a platform where the voice of the global south is something that it wants to reflect upon. Also the reformation of multilateral institutions. Meanwhile, on the sidelines of the G20, a big meet between the US President Joe Biden and the Prime Minister on several fronts, and it could in fact have the potential to completely change and revolutionize India's relationship with the United States. Already the United States Congress has in fact given a no objection when it comes to share of critical technology, especially on engines by GE, and that has come as a big step when it comes to technology transfer, TOT being one of the aspects of Indian defense trade as well. So that has been one of the biggest highlights when it comes to the meeting with Joe Biden, and it is expected that small nuclear reactors, that would in fact power the coming years, especially India's economy, that is something that would be also on the table. So a big power loaded meeting to happen between the Prime Minister of India and the United States President. All eyes on that particular meet on the sidelines of G20 as well. Now these are visuals, in turn these are interior designs that have been put in place for the hall where the meeting is scheduled to take place. These are in fact the convention center where the position of yoga are on display, yoga being one of an amphitheater kind of build up over there as well. A lot of interior decorations that reflect Indian culture has been displayed at the convention center. Well, you can see the meet that would take place with the display of screens for the G20 as well. Hectic parleying also taking place, but for last minute preparations also being carried out at the moment to ensure that the guests feel welcome, and the summit in fact sees the hosting being carried out perfectly. The G20 summit could become one of the biggest moments for India's diplomatic history. This is the summit meeting room, and you can see the display of India's art as well as part of the interior decorations inside the summit room, and of course the convention center where the meeting is going to take place. You have display of sculptures as well as the manner of which postmodernism decide married with Indian architectural sensitivities all have been put into place for designing that convention center. We have Amitabh Kant in fact giving an idea about the G20 and how the G20 is in fact going to be one of the most important moments in India's diplomatic history. Let's in fact listen into it.
First and foremost is that you must be able to get the New Delhi Declaration to perfection. And this means that you leaders are getting together to actually discuss, finalize the New Delhi Leaders Declaration. I'm the G20 Sherpa. That means my job is to enable my leader. I'm an assistant and a support. I have to provide assistance and support to my leader, who's the Prime Minister, to reach on top of the Mount Everest. And that is really the key to this New Delhi summit. And this means that you have to negotiate that across several areas on all your priorities. The theme is One Earth, One Family, One Future, Vasudhaiv Kutumbakam, but we are discussing a range of priorities which have to be all 20 countries, including 9 invitee countries, 29 countries have to agree to. That is the work which has been going on for a year. And finally, the Sherpas negotiate on behalf of the leaders, and we'll finally take it forward. So that negotiation is one critical component of it. The second is about how you execute the G20 Leaders Summit, on which a whole range of officers, the logistic division, everyone works towards that. And the third bit is that the summit itself on its at Bharat Mandapam, which is the new Pragati Maidan, its execution over 2 days will be critical. Managing the leaders who come in at the hotels, from their arrival to the hotels on which the protocol of the Ministry of External Affairs looks after. That's a whole comprehensive job. So that is really the task of organizing it to perfection. Our task is really that we put in our best on the content side, on the execution of the event, and on taking care of all the guests who come to India.
Well, when it comes to the G20, of course, there is a huge meeting that is in fact happening as well when it comes to ensuring that all the guests are in fact welcomed into the area, and we are also awaiting a big meet of the diplomats as well. We will in fact have an interaction by our senior Kartikeya Sharma, who is the Deputy Managing Editor of our News9 streaming services, and he would in fact interact with the diplomats who had been coming in with the G20, speaking to them about various aspects about how we are in fact looking at the various institutions that are there and what are their expectations from this G20 summit. We directly go across to Kartikeya Sharma on this, and over to you, Kartikeya.
A very warm welcome on News9 Mediaverse. I'm Kartikeya Sharma and you are watching a special edition of G20. G20 is taking place at a cusp of number of global developments. The world is witnessing American nativism. The world is witnessing European protectionism. The world is witnessing a Russian war. A world is witnessing Chinese unilateralism